to today's speakers who are from the class of 2020 in South Pasadena High School. Go Tigers on being admitted to those amazing colleges. I know that was the result of very hard work, and congratulations, especially to your parents and your teachers and the administration. But no matter whether you are a family with a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, you students are truly outstanding and exceptional. And let me tell you why. Number one, you are the most advanced generation in terms of technology. And I know that your parents are grateful because whenever they need help with their apps, they look to you. Number two, your generation is the most passionate about social justice issues, and you will be asked by your actions to resolve social justice issues, whether it's immigration, the environment, civic participation, gender, and racial equality. Number three, you are among the wealthiest of students of all generations, but you are redefining wealth not just as material things, but values that matter, values that are priceless, values that will last a lifetime no matter what the economy. Number four, you will be the first students to challenge to study during the pandemic era, and what a challenge that is. But you are already proving that you will survive, that you will thrive to keep education and hope alive. I'm so proud of you students, teachers, and parents. This is going to be an amazing future with you as our budding student leaders. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. It's a great. Okay. All right. So next, I'm going to welcome our dear Miss Adriana Wiedemann from SPHS High School.
Hello, everybody. And I want to thank also Ms. Chang for organizing this. And this is one of the most valuable and creative ideas. So I want to begin by telling all the class of 2020, everyone that's on this call, congratulations, seniors. Wow. I mean, what a year you had and the accomplishments that you've had the last four. And to end like this was very unexpected, challenging, and you still thrive. So congratulations to all of you. We had a beautiful assembly, our last assembly, where many of you sang. And if I think about it, I'll start crying. So I just want you to know that you're seen, and I'm impressed with all of you. So as everyone knows, those of you that know me, my name is Adriana Wiedemann, and I've been a teacher since 1996. I've been at South Pasadena High School for the last 18 years. This is one of the best high schools in California. And what makes it so great is that it's your student body. The kids that go here are simply amazing, hardworking, dedicated, and they embrace opportunities. And I think that's this is what's so beautiful about this call, is that we're talking about opportunities and what's coming for your high school experience. They take advantage of what's been available to them, and in turn, this has created for all our seniors here an excellent resume for their college applications. We have so many extracurricular classes offered and activities in South Pasadena. We have Skills USA, Virtual Business, and many other award-winning programs that are recognized in the nation. So when colleges see your transcript with good grades, your activities, and then the personal statement, many of our kids become one of the top candidates across the nation, as you'll be hearing from them today. So personally, my favorite thing to do is to help students with their personal statements. The English department assigns it as part of an assignment, but a paper like this is very important, and it takes many, many edits and sometimes months to complete. So these are the essays that students write about themselves and send to colleges with their admissions applications. It takes a long time to write one essay, as some of you that are on this call know, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to best represent yourself in a limited word count with who they are, your philosophies, and what you've learned through the high school experience, your insights. This paper, there's also supplemental essays, but we always focus on the main one, also has the challenge that you have to get the right story out and the right words. And you have to have authenticity, time, and dedication. But when these essays are perfected, the final drafts are submitted, every word is precise and they work. And I promise you, they work. And the entire time I've worked there, I have not seen any student not impress themselves with their success, not 1 year. My favorite thing is when they walk in the door, the students will run in, Miss Wiederman, I'm accepted, I'm in my dream college. And this opens the door to a new life of higher education. And sometimes I've seen it change the entire legacy of a family because you're now pursuing the dreams, and then it's just a generational blessing, to put it mildly. It makes the hours and hours we took working were worth every minute. So it's truly one of the best things to focus on. I think as you're beginning your journey through South Pasadena High School, I suggest you keep a nice journal and you keep all memories of all the things you'd like to participate in, your favorite interests, so that when we begin to write, you have a lot to say and we can start having some good, authentic stories for your masterpiece. So again, it's really helping with these statements for me is life-changing. I do it from my heart. It's one of the most rewarding experiences. And I just want to thank all the seniors that are on this call for letting me be a part of this journey. And I can't wait to see what you guys do. I agree wholeheartedly that you guys will be the game changers for this coming decade. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Wiederman. Thank you so much for a great speech. And then I think all the seniors and also all the current high school students has been inspired by you so much. And then I feel so honored to be with you for the past 12 years, to be the same colleague, same high school. And I learned so much from you. I'm going to miss you so much.
You are our biggest loss, but we'll stay together and we'll keep working.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, good. Okay, next we're going to start our student speech. So every student working so hard, prepared PowerPoint presentation, share their life 4 years in the college, in the high school, and also their application, and then the way they go to their dream college. So we are going to start it from Jamila Ha. So everybody has 15 minutes to present, and all the audience, you can post your questions here in the Q&A area. And after they all finish, and I'm going to read the questions, and then the panelists or the student is going to answer. Okay? All right. Okay. Let's welcome Jamila Ha.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. So my name is Jamila. I just graduated, and next year I'm going to be starting as a freshman at USC. So I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my personal application process. So I think the best way to start is to kind of go through my classes. So can we go to the first slide? Next one, sorry. So freshman year, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this, but basically, I think the only thing that's really worth pointing out in my freshman year is the fact that I took Math 3+ rather than Math 2+ or 1+. This required me to take a placement test, and I started the class actually 6 weeks late. And I think being able to kind of take this step and kind of accelerate my own personal growth, being in this class made a big difference in my high school career. Next slide. Sophomore year, I took 2 AP classes and 1 honors class, and I think overall it was a fairly difficult year. I added all of my, what's the grade thing on it? Does anyone else see it?
Yeah, we will see it. Yes.
Oh, that's not mine. But the grade thing kind of covers the numbers, but I kind of rated the difficulty of each of my years in these. So I think my sophomore year was, a 7 out of 10. And then my freshman year was a 3 out of 10. Next slide, please. So in my junior year, I took 3 AP classes and 1 honors class, and I one thing I like to point out in this year is that instead of taking an honors Spanish class, I took a regular one, just because personally I didn't see that Spanish had that much of an impact on me, and I didn't feel that I needed to spend so much time like studying and memorizing all of these terms. So I chose to focus on subjects like AP Lang, biology, and Calculus BC, which I took with Miss Moon, who's now retired. Overall, my junior year was an 8 out of 10. It was a difficult year, but I think that what made it so hard was that like there was just a lot of stuff going on at home as well. Next slide. Senior year, I took 2 classes at GCC, which is a local community college. If you can do that, I highly recommend it. Just because even if the school doesn't allow you to, or it doesn't like, they won't let you transfer the classes in, you can still send your college transcript separately, which is registered as a second school. So I took college level physics and multivariable because I didn't want to take AP physics at school. And in school, I took 4 APs, and yeah. Overall, it was an 8 out of 10. I, by my senior year, had gotten used to the workload, and things had started to calm down for me. So I think that it was hard in that like I had to balance a lot of my applications, but the classes I felt were easier. Next slide. So some of the awards I did were, because it's part of the application process, is I personally did a lot of writing competitions, and I have 2 yearbook awards. And I also had a lot of local recognition on like via newspaper for a lot of my accomplishments. And the thing I like to point out with my awards is that like even though I'm an applied math major, I had a lot of awards and honors that weren't specifically related to math. And part of why I focused on these kinds of awards was because I wanted to show that even though I want to go into STEM, I still have interest in other places. And that made me an appealing candidate for liberal arts schools. Next slide. So in terms of activities, a lot of my focus fell into community service and yearbook. Other than that, I did a lot of photography, graphic design. I did a lot of work for my, a lot of like just local groups, most of which were the SVCC. And in terms of sports, I did varsity badminton and varsity golf. Golf, which I did for 3 years, and badminton, which I did for 4. And outside of school, I did a lot of private tutoring. I was an academic coach for Miss Moon. And one thing that I like to point out is that, like, personally, I like to read and write. And that's also an activity that you can include on your college transcript or on your college, like, activities list. And a lot of people choose not to because it's not a legit activity. But I think that it was very, very beneficial for me to include that because it showed that I like to educate myself through reading and I like to express myself through writing. Next slide. So in terms of community service, specifically some of the programs I did were Calculus for a Cause, PEACH. I interned with the National Foundation of Cancer Research. I did the sock drive, and I also did the Pasadena Ronald McDonald House Club, which was in Pasadena, and what they do is a lot of like just hospital work for socioeconomic students. Calculus for a Cause is something I did with Albert Zhao. We were co-administrators for it. And I think that we had a lot of positive impacts on it. I think Albert's probably going to talk more about it. PEACH is a program I did with, it was basically a 1.5 week program where I went to China and I basically encouraged socioeconomic students there to continue working hard and achieving their dreams. And I think that my community service had another really big positive impact on me as a person because a lot of the community service I did wasn't for college, but it still ended up being beneficial for me because a lot of these hours I chose not to log. And I expressed that in my applications because I didn't want it to be like a number on there because me doing community service is my contribution to a community that gave a lot to me. And I think just being genuine and actually enjoying like what you do makes a big difference. Next slide, please. So this is like my point of view in terms of how like just tips and things for your application. Next slide. So the first big thing you have to think about when applying for college is what major you're gonna do. So my recommendation is pick something you genuinely enjoy because in your application, it'll show if it's not something that you truly want to major in. It should reflect your extracurriculars, even if it is a bit of a stretch. for me, I applied as a mathematical economics major, but I actually ended up changing it to applied math because I wanted a more focused path. And so the way that reflected for me is I wanted to make like changes to socioeconomic programs through the world of economy and mathematics. And so that connected to a lot of my extracurriculars and also my love for reading and writing, because like one way I express myself is through writing, and a lot of my applications including like dreams of publishing books. So another thing I wanted to point out is that you can always change your major as long as it's within, actually most people do change their majors, and it's really easy as long as it's within the same school. So like, for example, at USC, if you're in Dornsife, which is the College of Letters and Sciences, you can change to any major within that school. But like, you can't, it's a lot harder to change to like the School of Business. So like, as long as you keep that in mind when you're applying, don't be afraid to pick a major that you might be a little bit uncertain about. And finally, statistic-wise, some majors do place more of an emphasis on finding like females. For me, like I knew that STEM, like I knew that I wanted to do STEM, but I also knew that there were like certain benefits about being a female applying in a STEM major. Next slide. So in terms of picking what college you want to go to, I would say that prestige is not everything. Yes, you want to make sure that your school is really good, but I think it's more important to find a school that fits you and is strong for your major. So like some schools may be like ranked, I don't know, top 10 in the US, but for your particular major, they're top 30. Go to a school that's better for your major rather than the overall prestige. And I'd recommend picking a good range of schools. You want like 5 safeties, 10 targets, and maybe 5 reach schools. And one thing I want to just warn about is that if you don't get into a safety school, don't be afraid, because sometimes safeties don't accept a lot of students if it's unlikely that that student will even bother going to that school because they're just so out of range. And my final tip in terms of like picking your college is that anything under a 50% acceptance rate is pretty much a target school, if not a reach school, depending on your statistics. For most people, like anything with lower than 50% has to be a reach. Next slide. Letters of rec. So I would say when you ask for letters of rec, make sure you prepare resumes ahead of time. Teachers want to know about your activities, how you've tied what you've learned in class outside of things, but most of all, your letters of rec are about your behavior in class. Schools want to know how you are around other people, how you are around a classroom setting, and pick teachers. That's why I would recommend picking teachers that you're close with, not necessarily teachers that are related to the major that you're applying to. Letters of rec can also come from outside sources. For example, I had a letter of rec from some of the people that I interned with, and I also had a letter of rec from a family that I tutored. I think that gave schools a lot of insight about who I am as a person in my community and in my school as well. So just keep that in mind when you kind of decide that. Are there any more slides, or is that it? Oh yeah. So finally, some general tips. Find a way that you can tie all of your extracurriculars together. For me, like I wanted to tie math, economy, and community service together. And so when I wrote my applications, I wanted to create a world where income inequality does not cripple the socioeconomically fragile. That is a sentence that I had in almost all of my essays for each school. And that was something that I kind of centralized my application around. Having that gives your application a lot of focus, and I highly recommend it. I think that's it for me. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you for listening to my high school journey.
Okay, thank you, Jamila. Thank you so much. It's great presentation. Give us lots of general tips, and then how to apply the dream college, and then how you'll fight through your 4 years to go to USC. It's great. Okay, so audience, if you have a question for Jamila, you can post question here, and then later when everybody finish, we will let them answer the questions. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, next will be Albert Joe. Okay, Albert Joe has been accepted by what school? Princeton, right? Yeah, Princeton. Okay, Albert, you can start.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Albert. So I'm just going to preface my segment by saying that most of my presentation is really just what worked for me. I admittedly was not super well prepared for college applications. I'm the first person in my family to go to get their undergraduate here. So we sort of experimented with different things during the college application process. So there are definitely pitfalls I fell into, but I'm really trying to focus on what worked for me in this presentation. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I think a big part about the high school experience is choosing classes. And I think Jamila already touched upon this a little bit, but a big part of it is knowing yourself. What are your abilities? Are you someone who can handle a ton of stress? I know for myself in junior year, I ended up dropping a push when I was choosing my classes at the end of sophomore year, simply because I felt that I would much rather be able to balance BC, Lang, and Bio with my extracurriculars and mental health than slog through a junior year where I wasn't getting any sleep. And on top of that, I felt that history was probably the class that would help me the least in what I want to do in life. Math and science would be important because I want to be a STEM major, and English, of course, is always important because writing, reading, and analyzing language is going to be important no matter what you do. But I think something that you should also keep in mind that isn't always apparent is knowing the teachers, because we all know that at every school there are certain teachers who have excellent reputations and other teachers who have less than stellar reputations. And a lot of time it's the teacher who will inspire love for a subject. So I would really recommend taking classes where the teacher is known for being engaging and an excellent teacher. And if there's a certain class that's taught by a teacher with perhaps not a great reputation, and you have to take that class, a good way to get around that is taking that senior year, because what really matters is what you take sophomore and junior year. Senior year, yes, it matters, but it's a little less important. Lastly, I'd say be consistent. The high school offers a lot of pathways, like in languages and computer science and arts. So it's really good to be consistent and take similar things all 4 years, like 4 years of Spanish, let's say, or 4 years of band or orchestra. Okay, next slide. So these are some study habits and time management skills that worked for me. So I know people say this a lot, but it's because it works. Doing work the day it's assigned is really helpful because then the material is fresh and you're a lot more efficient, because a lot of the time we waste time and energy trying to remember what we learned in class, whereas if we were to do the work the day we learned it, we would save a lot more time. You should also know your needs. So some of us like working where it's really quiet. Some of us need something going on in the background. Some of us need more light. Some of us like it a little darker. So know what you need to have a good study environment. For me, it was very helpful to always have a to-do list with me. So I'm a very visual and tactile person. So I like having a physical list on my desk where I can see exactly what I have to do and plan around that, and then be able to cross things off as I finish them. Okay, and then something that's a little less obvious that I think helped me a lot is switching between assignments. So it's really easy for us to sit down and be like, I'm gonna do my math homework right now, and just push ourselves all the way through until we're done with all of our math assignments. But what I think is really helpful is do some math. Maybe you get tired of it after 30 minutes, so you can switch, do something else, do some science, and when you get tired of that, maybe move over to English, and when you're tired of English, you can go back and try to finish math. It's much more productive if you keep on doing things that are interesting. Once things get boring, you try to mix it up. And that way, you keep your brain from getting tired, and by switching to something else that's also being productive rather than using binge watching to help rest your brain. I know a lot of people also say this, but staying organized is really important. This is not only like with your binders and what you bring to class every day, but also past work. It's a really good idea to keep all your work from the school year that you're currently in. One, it'll help you prepare for finals, and two, in the off chance that a teacher forgets to input something into Aries or whatever grading system your school uses, you can pull out the assignment with a score on it, and they can fix your grade much easier that way. My last tip for study habits would be to think like a teacher. This really applies to taking notes, especially in a class like history, because not everything a teacher is saying is going to be important for the test. So as you're speaking, you should constantly be asking yourself, is this something that could appear on a test? If you're doing that as you're taking notes, you end up saving time because if you write down everything the teacher says, when you come to study your notes for the test, you start having to sift through your notes and figuring out what's important and what's not. And that ends up taking more time and creating more stress because you're pressed for time as you're studying. Okay, next slide. So extracurricular activities. So I think it's really helpful to choose just a few things to focus on that really match what you enjoy doing, as opposed to spreading yourself really thin and doing the bare minimum for a bunch of things. And like Jamila said, I think it's really good if you can somehow find a way to tie your extracurriculars into giving back to the community. So for me, one of my largest extracurriculars was music. So I've been doing music since I was a toddler and playing violin since I was 5. So that took up a lot of my time outside of class. And that ended up being a big part of my college applications in terms of activities and even within my essays. Another extracurricular that was really important for me was calculus for a cause. So that really tied into my strength in math, as well as my love of helping people. And so if you can find activities that really tie together and embody who you are as a person, that really makes for a powerful application. Okay, next slide. So summer activities and programs. Summer is a great time to sort of get ahead and really solidify your application and what colleges see. It's really easy just to sit there and relax over the summer, but it's really more beneficial if you take advantage of the 2 to 3 months that you have. A lot of summer programs are really focused, deeper exploration of a certain topic. And for instance, like with me, I went to music camps for the past 2 years, and those were basically just doing things related to music from like 8 in the morning to 5 in the evening. And that really shows your commitment to that thing. And colleges like seeing commitment, especially if it's something aligned with your passions or interests. Now, for me, looking back on it, it probably would have been a little more helpful if I did some research over the summer, seeing as I'm going into a STEM field. But at the same time, the summer programs I did for music really showed dedication to what I enjoy doing. So I think that's also very important. Next slide. So I think Jamila touched up on a lot of this, but yes, it's very important when you get letters of recommendation that you get it from a teacher that you're close to. They should know you really well as a student. So go in during lunch, stay after class a little bit and talk to them. Get to know them, let them get to know you, talk about what you like, what they like. Just focus on the human connection, because if they enjoy your presence as a person, that's going to only make their letter of recommendation even more powerful. Next slide. So staying organized during the college application process. So there's a lot to keep track of. Tons of different documents you have to turn in, tons of due dates. So for me, what helped is keeping a spreadsheet. And each of these 6 items on this slide are different columns you can have. So one would be the name of the school and then the challenge level. So this would be like reach, level, or safety. Price range, although you shouldn't exactly choose a school based on solely its price, it's still nice to keep that in mind. Columns for other application requirements. So how many supplemental essays do they need? Do they need letters of recommendation, things like that. Perhaps most importantly, the due date. And also something that tends to get forgotten is when the financial aid application is due. Next slide. So when you're using a spreadsheet, something that's really helpful is to color code things. So for me, having a different color for reach, safety, and level schools is helpful in terms of organizing everything in my head and being able to quickly see what I'm looking at. Having one column for each requirement is also helpful. So oftentimes, schools will ask for a bunch of different things. So for me, my spreadsheets had one column for essay number 1, a column for essay number 2, a column for rec letter number 1, rec letter number 2, things like that. And each of those squares, if you're using Google Sheets, you can put a checkbox in there, and then you can check things off as you complete them. And so that's like a really solid visual way to keep track of where you are in the application process. Okay, next slide. So I think I can provide a little bit of insight into applying for music programs, because I actually applied to both STEM and music programs this year. So when you're applying for music, it's really important to plan ahead in terms of repertoire and where you're going. So ideally, at some point during your junior year, you should have what your repertoire for auditions pinned down already. You should also be looking into which teachers you want to study with. Lots of planning ahead, because it's a much more complicated process to apply to music than it is applying to STEM. And if you are applying to music programs, it's going to be a lot of extra work, time, and effort. You're going to be putting in lots of hours practicing, writing additional essays that come with those. A lot of music schools within a university have extra application steps you need to take. And if you do make it to live auditions, you have to be prepared to miss school. Second semester, I ended up missing a week and a few days for various auditions. So you have to be ready to stay ahead and not let missing school drag your grades down. Okay, next slide. Okay, and that is it. And I guess we're leaving questions for the end. So yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alberto. Very, very good for your sharing. And I think is your major music, or what kind of major you are?
Well, everyone goes into Princeton undeclared, but my intended major is chemical and biological engineering.
Oh.
And yeah, I might do like a minor, they call them certificates at Princeton, but I might do a minor in music performance. But I applied to both, but I ultimately decided to go with STEM.
Oh, I see. Good. All right, great. Okay, thank you so much, Albert. Great presentation. All right, Charles. Next one is Charles. Yes, here we see Charles' slides here. Okay, Charles, you can start it.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Charles, and I'll be following Albert's wonderful presentation. So our presentation is on high school and applying to college advice. Next slide. So first, a little bit about myself. So I'm an incoming freshman at UC Berkeley with the intention of majoring in computer science. So I am in the College of Letters and Science. So everyone in that college is undeclared, but I have intention of majoring in computer science. And a few major activities I have been involved in include club badminton, which I have done for 7 years. I have competed around the US. I have also been the vice president of the Veritas Tutoring Club at South Pasadena High School, and I've taken 11 AP classes. And so in short, I was involved in many community-based activities and sports while also maintaining a 4.0 GPA. Next. So starting with high school advice. So my list of my advice topics include time management, learning how to budget time effectively, studying tips, finding help and resources, and extracurriculars. So starting off with time management. So I believe time management is one of the most important skills that anyone can have, any student can have. And it revolves around structuring your time to be able to complete all of your work while also participating in your extracurriculars and your day-to-day. So starting homework and restraining from procrastination go hand in hand. It's vital to start homework as soon as possible because it helps to reinforce the lessons from class and also prevents you from falling behind. It also allows more time to fully understand the material and get help if you need it. If you are procrastinating and you're doing your homework or project the night before and you find out that you have a problem or you need help, you're most likely not going to get it in time because it's the night before it's due. So starting early is very important. You also should set priorities so you avoid distractions, avoid going on YouTube, avoid playing video games until all your work is done. So You won't be distracted. And another important thing is a lot of us are not just focusing on academics in school. We also have extracurriculars, community service. So you also have to take those in mind when you plan your schedules, because you want to make sure that you still have time for your schoolwork and your academics. And I believe what's very important, like what Albert said earlier, was to have schedules and spreadsheets so you can track what you want to do in this particular day. It also prevents procrastination, distractions, because you already planned what you want to do. And also, don't be afraid to allocate breaks within your schedule. Explicitly write that you have a break from this time to this time, because everyone needs some breaks sometimes. And next slide. So like what I mentioned earlier, planning is key, right? It's incredibly hard to keep everything in your head, and you'll lose focus and you'll get distracted. So when you have that visual reminder of what you need to do next, it's very helpful. So here are my tips for some effective studying. You should remove anything in your environment that could distract you. So your phone, your video games. If your phone or computer is too tempting and you feel like you'll just leave your work behind, then you should put it in another room and lock yourself in another room so you could study. You should also have a designated studying place. So that could be like a quiet area in your house, or it can be the library or somewhere else where you can fully focus on studying without distractions. You should also have consistent periods of studying and breaks. So maybe you like to study for 30 minutes at a time and take a 5-minute break, or you like to study for 2 hours and take a 20-minute break, whatever works for you. Just have the consistency so that you can keep yourself accountable. And also another thing is to, whenever you finish your homework, you want to check them, because there's no point in finishing your homework and then not checking your answers, because checking your answers and correcting your mistakes allow you to fully understand the material. And same thing with tests. I always try to go in after school, review my tests and all the problems I missed so that I know what I need to work on, and so I don't miss it in the future. And another thing about studying is to fully understand the concepts and questions that you're working with. You want to understand why and how the problem works. You don't want to just memorize the solution to a problem, because if you know how the concept works and how you can apply it, you'll be able to solve questions that you haven't seen before on tests. So next slide. And another important thing is to pay attention to class. I personally believe that paying attention to class is the most effective way to learn, because that's the teacher is giving you the information right there, and you can learn it there. At home, I usually practice or do some review. So I'm not wasting time at home trying to relearn the material because I wasn't paying attention to class. Instead, I'm using that time to review for tests, doing homework, engaging in extracurriculars, so I don't have to be just relearning the material when I could have learned it in class. So I believe this is a very important tip. Next slide. So I also believe sleep is very important too, because if you're following all your plans and have effective time management, you shouldn't be sleeping super late every night, right? I know some people might stay up late to cramming for tests, but if you're following your plans and your schedules and you're studying every day, you shouldn't need to cram right before the day of a test. I believe that going to bed at least before 2 a.m. is ideal. And also, I believe sleeping is more worth it than late night cramming, because personally for me, if I tried a late night cram, I would wake up the next day sleepy. If I fall asleep during a test, I wouldn't remember anything. So I believe that at one point you should just call it a night and go to sleep. Next slide. So finding help. So not everyone is a genius at school, right? Everyone's going to struggle somewhere. So don't be afraid to ask questions. First and foremost, I think that teachers are the best resources you have, because they're directly teaching the material and the content, and they know what's going on in the class. So don't be afraid to ask your teachers. If you don't want to ask in class, you can approach them after school. They're usually always available, and they're always willing to help and answer questions. And they could also help review and explain concepts in a one-on-one setting, so that maybe you don't learn as well in a classroom setting, but you can learn well in a one-on-one setting. So teachers are there for you to help you. So aside from teachers, you also have your classmates, your peers, your fellow friends. They're all taking the same class. You could also ask them for help. So you could form study groups before tests, and you can form study groups for homework. And other students can also offer different perspectives or ideas that can help you like remember a concept better, or help you guide you in your studies. So in addition to teachers and your friends, there's also a lot of good online resources. There's Khan Academy, there's YouTube. You could just do a quick Google search and you can learn, you can find a website that teaches you the concept. And besides that, if you like the one-on-one setting, you can look for free school tutoring. At South Pasadena High School, like I mentioned, we have the Veritas Tutoring Club, where we have volunteer students volunteer their time to help other students and tutor them. Or if you have the resources, you could also look for private tutoring, which can greatly benefit you. Next slide. So extracurriculars. Just like what the other two speakers said, I believe that you should, extracurriculars can be almost anything you want it to be, as long as you find some meaningful activities that you enjoy. Just find something that you can truly enjoy and you can grow from. Also, to be active in your extracurriculars. If you really enjoy this extracurricular, you should be active. You can try to become a leader. You want to show your engagement with the extracurricular. And also be consistent. Don't go around trying a bunch of things and not sticking along with something for a long time, because it's better for people to see that you're engaged in an activity for a longer time instead of being engaged in a bunch of activities for a short amount of time. And also, if your extracurricular activity has it, it's also a good idea to attend competitions, because that can show off your skill and your dedication to the extracurricular. And it's a tangible, and competitions and winning them, those are all tangible results that you can show to colleges. So next slide. So now we're going to move on to applying to college and advice for that. So the topics include making a college list, writing essays, testing, and letters of recommendation. So when you're making your college list, you want to create a list like both Jamila and Albert said, you want to create a list with a balance of reaches, targets, and safeties. And when you're also choosing the colleges, you want to list the most important factors, because everyone has different factors and different things that they're looking for in colleges. For example, maybe you care about location, maybe you care about the cost, maybe you care about the size and the student population. All of those factors differ between each person. So you want to make sure that you list what's the most important to you. And also another thing is to check for your major. I know a lot of people look at the US World Rankings and they look at the colleges, but there are a lot of colleges that have a lower overall ranking, but maybe their major they're ranked really high for a specific major. So that's very important too, because let's say you want to major in something, but you look at a school, maybe it's lower ranked on the overall rankings, but they're like #1 ranked in the country for that major, right? So you would still want to apply to that school. So you want to make sure that you check for your major. And also you want to keep in mind that prestige is not everything. You don't want to just apply to a school because of the prestige. You want to apply to the school because you like their program, you like the location, you like something that's besides the prestige. And finally, you want to find schools that you would actually attend. I know a lot of people will just apply to schools because they're just like, I'm just going to apply, but they wouldn't actually attend. If you're not actually going to attend to the school, then there's no point in applying. It's just a waste of time. For me, when I was creating my own college list, I would think of a school that I'd be considering applying to, and I would compare it to the colleges that I already had in my list. And if I determined that I wouldn't go to this school over the other colleges I already had, then I wouldn't apply to that college. And so next. So for writing essays. So writing essays, you want to choose a subject that is very meaningful to you and something you can elaborate and draw connections to. So essays don't have to be about something big that happens in your life or a life-changing event. They can just be something small, a small moment that made you realize something. You just want to use an event or a moment to show more of your personality and your character and your perspective. So don't just state in your essays, you don't want to just state your accomplishments and what you've done. That's for the extracurriculars and all the other sections of the application. In your essays, you want to show your problem solving, your creativity, your leadership skills, and all your different qualities. And for the Common App, you want to use a story or a narrative so you can create a detailed story that also conveys deeper meaning about yourself, but it's also memorable for the admissions officers to remember your essay, because admission officers go through hundreds and thousands of essays every year, and you want to write an essay that is memorable. And also try to be creative in your essays. Don't really talk about like sports or community service, because that's been overdone already. Don't talk about those topics unless you can write it in a unique way that really shows something about yourself. And before writing your essays, you also want to go over successful example essays. There's many online resources that gives you tips about writing essays, and you can also find many successful example essays. And in your essays, you don't want to overuse cliches. And also another important thing is to ask others to read your essays. They can offer different perspective, and they can also offer criticism to your essays. And one final thing is to be ready to have multiple drafts. When I was writing my Common App essay, I had like over 10 drafts. Right? You don't want to get attached to one story or one draft and not be able to move on, because sometimes other drafts are better than others. And so you don't want to get attached and not be able to move on. So next slide. So testing. So for the SAT test and the ACT test, when you're around, I would say, sophomore, you want to take a diagnostic test first to see where you're at and what score you're at. And then you want to determine your target score. And then you want to create a schedule so that you can reach your target score and by the determined test date. So create a set studying plan leading up to the determined test date, and make sure you study for at least 2 months before the test. So you don't have to pay for SAT prep or ACT prep. There's many online resources such as Khan Academy. There's also the official 8 SAT practice tests that are very helpful. As long as you're practicing your weak areas, you'll be fine with online resources. So when you're studying, you want to continue to practice weak areas every week. When I took the SAT for a month before, I took a practice test every week. Immediately after the practice test, I would go over all my mistakes and figure out what I did wrong, so that in the future I wouldn't make the same mistake. So it's very important to fully understand your mistakes, because for the SAT and ACT, all the types of questions are going to be the same. So you just want to understand which ones you're struggling on so that you can improve on in the future. And yeah. So next slide. So finally, letters of recommendation. So like Albert Jamila said, you want to choose teachers that you have a personal connection with inside of class or outside of class. And you want to choose teachers that you personally know, or they personally know you. So they don't have to be specifically teachers that you had in junior year. Those can be teachers that you are advisors of clubs or sports that you're active in, as long as they know you personally. You also want to build relationships with teachers early, right? You want to start early, so you want to form relationships as freshman, sophomore, so that teachers will have known you longer and will have more to write about. So in that way, they'll be able to write more personalized letters so that they can reveal more to the colleges. And another thing is, after you find the teachers that you want to ask for letters of recommendation, they have agreed, you want to provide them with a brag sheet and a question and answer letter where you talk more about yourself and your personal ideas, to give them more information so that they can use in their letters of recommendation. So yeah, that is my presentation. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask me at the end during the Q&A question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Charles. Great presentation, a lot of details. Okay, so if you have any question for Charles, please type your questions, and then you can post this here, and then we'll ask him to answer. Okay, great. Okay, next speaker will be Corey Segal. So Corey, admitted by Princeton. Great. Corey, it's your turn.
All right, hi everyone, I'm Corey. You can go to the next slide. So a little bit about me. I will be attending Princeton University. Like Albert said, you go in undeclared, but I applied as an architecture major, so I did also have to include a portfolio. Just some stats, I took 9 APs. I had a 3.98 GPA. I had a 1540 composite SAT. I did varsity track and soccer for 4 years. I've been playing club soccer since 4th grade, And I did virtual business at the high school for 3 years, and I explored the field of design in my free time. So those were the core things that I really did. Next slide, please. So for my freshman year, I will admit that I did not do that much. It ended up being okay, obviously, but I really focused on challenging myself academically first. So like Jamila, I tested in the Math 3+, and that was where I put most of my effort into academics. I took honors chemistry too, so I tried to take the hardest courses that were available. But I also continued with extracurricular commitments that I had prior to high school. So like I said, I did club soccer since 4th grade. I continued with that, and then I joined the varsity soccer and track team. So I really continued with athletics. So I didn't branch out too much, but I still did the same activities I was doing before at a high level. And then my sophomore year, I also challenged myself academically. I took 2 APs and 3 honors courses. And then sophomore year was really when I started to join new extracurricular activities. And I call them gateway extracurricular activities because it's like a 3-year progression pretty much. So I joined virtual business. I started on the intro team, and then the next year I was on the varsity team. And then I also joined Femineers, which is another gateway activity. So it's got a 3-year program built into it. So I think that gateway extracurriculars are pretty helpful because they're intended for you to stick with them for multiple years, which is great because it shows commitment, but also there's a different progression each year, so you can expand upon it and grow a little bit. All right, next slide, please. Okay, junior year, I took 3 AP courses and 2 honors. And here, I was on the accelerated track for math, and I was deciding whether or not I should take AP Statistics or AP Calculus BC. Ultimately, I decided not to take AP Calculus BC because it did not benefit me. I really wanted to prioritize my mental health, especially because I did not have a great time with AP Calculus AB. And plus, I didn't want to go into a STEM major, so I didn't really see a benefit in taking AP Calculus AB, like how kind of Albert mentioned with taking APUSH. So I think if you are debating between taking certain classes, really weigh what you could get out of each one. If the hard class is something that you truly are interested in, it doesn't necessarily have to be related to your major, but if you're really interested in it and you could write about something in that class, then take it. Or if it's a really great a really great elective that you could also get something out of it, I think you should take that too. So there's value to taking a hard class or taking an extracurricular instead of that class. And because I took AP Statistics instead of AP Calculus BC, I had a lot more time to devote into virtual business. And virtual business, I wrote about it so much on my college application. I poured so much time into it because I had that time available because I wasn't taking so many difficult AP classes. And honestly, I don't think I would have gotten into the schools had I not written about and participated in virtual business the way that I did. And these little animals on the screen here were just some illustrations that I did for my company, Ecmo. So yeah, it's part of my virtual business company. All right, next slide, please. So senior year, not too special. I just took 4 AP classes. I continued with varsity virtual business. I became the chief technology officer in that. So again, a progression. And then I was the girls varsity soccer captain. So again, I was sticking with these extracurriculars for multiple years, but I just kind of rose to the top. Yeah, so nothing new, nothing too special. Next slide, please. So summers, I think, are a really great way, like Albert mentioned, to explore your interests. So I am personally very interested in the field of design. So I took some summer intensive courses, kind of like Albert did with music. So I took a course at the Southern California Institute of Architecture on architecture and an industrial design course at the Art Center. So they're 4 weeks, and even though I didn't necessarily want to put them on my college application, they were a really great way to dive into these different fields and get to learn about them. And they were fun, so I think that's the most important thing. Last summer, I also interned at an interior design firm in South Pasadena through the South Pasadena internship program. And I strongly recommend doing the South Pasadena internship program if you feel that your resume is lacking a little bit, or maybe if you don't have a job, because colleges do like to see that you have some sort of job experience. So that was helpful to me since I didn't have a job. And some colleges do ask what you did over your summers. I know Princeton did ask, so I talked about the programs that I just mentioned and some other things that I did over the summers. And also you can list your summer activities in that activities section of your common application, which is pretty helpful. So yeah, I think overall, if you look at my performance in high school, it was good, but it was pretty standard. So I think the summers were what really helped me differentiate myself and branch into design, because that was not really offered at the high school. So I think, again, the summer demonstrated my curiosity in the field of design, and I used my time productively, and they all fit a singular theme. All right, next slide, please. So letters of recommendation, pretty much the same thing that everyone else has been saying. You don't have to choose the teachers in your flashiest or hardest class. It doesn't have to be a core math class, it doesn't have to be an English class. I use AP Statistics and Honors Spanish 5-6 teachers because they saw me as a person besides just my performance in class. So I was able to talk to them really comfortably as a person and about other things besides the course material. So I strongly recommend getting teachers who you're really comfortable with. All right, next slide, please. So I will admit, I probably did not go about my college application process the best. I was a little disorganized. It really stressed me out. So I don't recommend putting it off, because that's kind of what I did, and they ended up being pretty rushed. So definitely you should try to have a list formed in summer. It doesn't have to have every college finalized on it, but you should have a general idea of your core colleges and the ones that you want to apply to. So research the school and the prompts well in advance so that you have a general idea of what you will have to write about if you do decide to apply to these colleges. And again, it is okay to add schools later for regular decision. Like I mentioned, I'm going to Princeton, but I did not plan on applying to it until much later into the application process. It was one of the schools that I tacked on later on. So you don't have to have a core list, and it is okay if you change it a little bit. Another thing I would recommend is you should research the acceptance styles of some schools. If you apply early decision or early action to some of these top reach schools, you're 5 times more likely to get into them than if you apply regular decision. And one school I applied to, which I got into, was Tulane University. They only accept 1% of regular decision applicants. So if you want a chance at schools like that, you have to apply early action or early decision. But again, these schools don't really advertise that, so you have to seek that information out on your own. All right, next slide, please. So for the beginning of college applications, I didn't exactly have a clear idea of where I wanted to go. I didn't have a dream school. I really liked the UCs, so I kind of prioritized that first. So I also applied early action to some safety and some target colleges. And if you don't have a dream school, I really recommend doing this because I was able to hear back from some safeties and high targets well before the regular decision deadline. So while I was still going through the application process, I had heard back from some schools I would have been more than happy to attend, and a big burden was just put off of me, and I could just relax a lot more. And I also got a general sense of how my application was perceived from some colleges, because I did apply to some target reach schools, and then they responded back to me, and sometimes offered scholarships, so then you can get an idea of what worked and what didn't. So I personally found that helpful. And also applying early action, I feel definitely did strengthen my essays for reach schools, because a lot of the college prompts you will find are extremely similar, especially based on the major that you're applying to. So I wrote a lot about architecture. So I was able to hone the essays that I wrote for those safety schools and edit them, and then pretty much submit a very similar but just better edited essay to those reach schools. So again, if you're not applying ED, I recommend this.
What are you doing?
And I also recommend just remembering some application requirements for schools you're on the fence about. Again, your list doesn't have to be solidified, but if you remember the certain requirements, then you can kind of factor in what schools you can add on depending on your schedule and the colleges you know you want to apply to, and if you can tack on those additional colleges. All right, next slide, please. So I completed my UCs prompts before my personal statement because I cared more about UCs. I don't really think that the order matters if you want to do UCs first or your personal statement, but I will say that doing the UCs first allowed me to explore 4 different topics, and that kind of helped with my brainstorming process for my personal statement. But either order is fine. If you do care about regular decision and applying ED, definitely do your personal statement first. But the UCs do come up in November, so remember that. But also don't spend too much time and put off the other, because that's what I did with UCs. I put a lot of time into my UCs, and I ended up starting my personal statement late. I had to start it in October, which is way too late. Do not start it in October. Definitely try to get some solid drafts before then, because you're going to feel really stressed and really rushed. All right, next slide, please. So like I mentioned with my personal statement, it was a pretty rushed process. I personally struggled a lot because I had poor time management with it, because I prioritized my UCs, and it's a really big undertaking. So I felt a lot of pressure because I didn't know what topic to choose. I felt that I had to choose one main event in my life or one main topic or one main passion, but honestly, that sounded really forced to me. So I ultimately decided to write about something that I felt passionately about. And this wasn't necessarily an activity or a unique experience. It was just a hobby and pretty much how I approached life. So I wrote about my love of food and how my attitude towards trying new foods influenced my approach to life and trying new activities. So again, it doesn't have to be one thing. It can just pretty much be your philosophy or how you see life, your passions. And I think writing something that's meaningful to you like this and being authentic about it will make the essay process a lot easier to write. It's still going to be a pain, but if you write about something you like, it's going to be a lot less of a hassle, and your essay will sound a lot more genuine. So I think something that I think would be helpful is, if you're writing this essay and you were to read it to a room full of people who you know, would you stand by it? If not, then maybe you should change it, because those people know you, and if it doesn't sound like you, they're going to let you know. All right, next slide, please. So some general advice. So the rankings on the Common App do matter. So I think you should put the most meaningful activities at the top, and the activities that you pour the most time into at the top, because those are the first thing that colleges will see. So you don't want to put something that you only do like once a month at the top. I play soccer, like I mentioned, I do track, and I do virtual business. So those are at the top for me because those were my main commitments. Supplements are just as important, if not more than important, than your personal statement. Your personal statement is really great for showing who you are as a person, but these schools need to see how you will fit within them. So the supplements allow them to see that. Because you can have a really great personal statement, but if your supplements don't fit their school, they're not going to accept you. I would say get around 3 trusted voices for help. I personally use my dad, my sister, and my mom. I think 3 is a good amount because they can each provide different feedback, since they each know you a little bit differently. But if you get too many, that could be a little bit difficult. Your essay could get a little bit convoluted, and then you might not know who to trust. So I recommend getting 3 people who really know you. And then another tip is that standardized testing scores are thresholds. And by that, I mean, once you reach a certain point with your score, I don't think you need to go any higher with it. I think if you're in the 1400 zone or in the 1500 zone, I think you're good. I don't think it really matters. Colleges don't really care once you pass that 1500 mark. And I can attest to this because Princeton University's acceptances for the kids they accepted this year, 50% of them were in the 700 range. So for 700 to like 780 for math, and 700 to like 760 for English. 50% of kids are in that range, 25% are above that, and 25 are below that. So just know that you don't have to take the test 4 or 5 times to get a perfect score. It doesn't matter. They just need to know that you are capable of surviving there once you get that one score. And I also took the SAT during August, and that was a little bit better for me because I was less stressed. School was just starting. I didn't have to focus on studying for the SAT while studying my other schoolwork. Again, I don't think it's necessary to have a college counselor. You can have one if you want. I didn't use one. I just used someone to help me brainstorm a little bit for the UC, since that was such a big undertaking. But they did not read my essays, did not read my personal statement. So I think as long as you do have people who really know you and can help you, that's helpful. If you don't, then maybe you want to get a college counselor, but otherwise definitely not necessary. Also, I think interviews matter for top tier colleges, but they are not make or break. A bad interview won't hurt you that much, and a good interview won't hurt you that much. It has to be an extremely excellent interview to really help you, or an extremely bad interview to really hurt you. However, that's not to say that you shouldn't prepare for them. You definitely should prepare for them. If you do know anyone who is an alumni of a school and does interviews, definitely see if you can arrange doing a practice interview with them. I did that with 2 people, and it was extremely helpful. I got to get a mock interview, see what the environment is like, get my brain thinking about certain questions. So I strongly, strongly recommend that. And then lastly, I think the most important piece of advice is be honest with yourself when writing about yourself. Really don't try to stretch your accomplishments, because these college admissions counselors will see. They're really good at their job, and they can see if you're trying to be a little bit if you're trying to flex too much and if you're not being honest with yourself. So if you really genuinely don't feel like yourself when you're writing it, then you shouldn't submit it, because college counselors will see that too. So just really be honest with yourself when you write about it. And at the end of the day, you should be proud of what you write, and you should feel that you could read it to a room full of people who you know and stand by it. All right, next slide, please. And that's it. So if you have any questions, even after Q&A panel, feel free to email me. My email's right there with any more specific questions. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Corey. A great presentation. Okay, so you can always post your question here for Corey. So by the end, we will ask Corey to answer these questions. Okay, great. Okay, next will be Adam Young. Adam Young, also accepted by UC Berkeley. Okay, so Adam.
All right. Hello, everyone. So I'll be sharing my own road through high school, but also some general advice that I hope can satisfy some questions that anyone might have, whether you're middle school, high school, or you're a parent. So here's my presentation. Next slide, please. So a little bit about me first. I'm actually not a SoCal guy. I was born in Urbana, Illinois, which is a little university town. And my plans for college are to hopefully double major in applied math and CS. Like Charles, I will be attending the College of Letters and Science at UC Berkeley. So everyone there is undeclared. And some of my loves, I'm a violinist. I love YouTube, maybe a bit too much. And I also love talking about math. Next slide, please. So I know the title of this whole presentation was The Road to a Dream College. But actually, in order to get to a dream college, you have to follow multiple separate roads. And the ones I've listed here are the ones that I believe you should focus on in high school. You want to prioritize your academic rigor, your extracurricular engagement, and your community service. So next slide, please. We'll be starting off with our discussion of academic rigor. Move on to the next slide, please. So really, the goal with taking AP and honors classes are to demonstrate interest and show that you can challenge yourself. However, one thing that's really important is to not swamp yourself with too many AP or honors classes. You want to preserve a good work-life balance. And I think the main way that you can achieve that is to take classes that interest you, not classes that you think may necessarily interest colleges. And I believe you'll gain a lot more from high school this way. So for example, one thing that I really wanted to focus on in my high school experience was math, because it was a big passion of mine in middle school. And to do that, I really tried to challenge myself by taking a number of high-level math courses. Like Corey and like Jamila, I started off freshman year in Math 3+ after taking the placement exam. And after that, I moved on to Calculus AB, Calculus BC, and eventually I took classes at PCC in multivariable calculus and linear algebra. So I think that's something that really contributed to my college application. Next slide, please. So GPA and tests, it's a bit of a contentious topic right now because lots of colleges are starting to phase out standardized testing. For example, recently the UC system announced that they would begin phasing out the SAT and ACT tests. So the importance of GPA and testing isn't as prevalent as it used to be. In general, like Corey said, many schools, many colleges will use GPAs and testing as a sort of threshold for the minimum bound that they'll choose to accept students. Before, it might have been around something like 1550 on the SAT, 34 plus on the ACT. But really, now it's not as important as it used to be. One thing that I can recommend, however, is that you take around 2 to 3 AP subject tests. The ones that I recommend are Math 2, which is an extra SAT math test that you can take with the SAT 2 tests. A science, so for example, take a subject test in biology and physics or chemistry, and also a history, so US history, world history, whatever interests you. Next slide, please. So some things to keep in mind about academics is that, once again, they aren't as important to college admissions process. They won't make or break your application. And there is an argument to be made that extracurriculars and community service are what truly defines a college application. AP tests, they can be helpful though. For those of you who don't know, AP tests allow you to earn credits in college, which allows you to skip some introductory classes or contribute credits towards your graduation if you wish to graduate early. Next slide, please. So when it comes to academics, remember your work-life balance. Good thing to do is to exercise time management, develop good study habits, figure out what you want to prioritize each day. For different people, it works different ways. Albert, for example, creates a spreadsheet for what he wants to do each day. For me, what I've personally found is to have a series of set goals for each day. And that way I don't skimp on them or get distracted or whatever. And do not overwhelm yourself with academics. I really recommend that you take classes that you are really, really interested in. And not only that, but you also want to be able to find time for extracurriculars and community service because those are very valuable components of your application. All right, next slide, please. So the next main point I want to emphasize is extracurricular engagement. Next, please. So extracurricular activities are great for a number of things. They help to demonstrate interest in a particular field. For example, to help demonstrate my interest in mathematics, I attended a couple summer camps. I attended Stanford Pre-Collegiate Number Theory, which helped demonstrate my interest in higher level mathematics. They're also a great way of showing community engagement. One of the extracurricular activities I felt like I gained a lot from was volunteering for the pit orchestra for the spring musical each year. And getting to work with other people really helped contribute to my college application as a whole. Extracurricular activities can also demonstrate leadership. For example, if you're a leader in a club, that could be helpful in your college application. And most of all, extracurricular activities demonstrate that you can grow and succeed in college because college and work, they're not simply taking place in a classroom setting. You'll be extrapolating all your knowledge towards helping your community or pursuing a job, a career, or anything like that. Next slide, please. So some ideas for extracurriculars. There's a lot of extracurricular activities that are offered at South Pasadena High School. Sports and clubs. You can go in depth into an academic subject by attending academic competitions or community college classes. Like I said, I attended community college classes in multivariable calculus, linear algebra. And for academic competitions, I did something called the American Mathematics Competition, which is held around the nation, and a bunch of high school mathematicians butt heads trying to solve these questions. There's also the music and the arts, like Albert, he played the violin and viola, and I'm sure that was very valuable towards his college application. And something that you can also do is an individual project. For example, if you're a musician, you can work on a recording that you can submit supplementally to a college. Or you can do things such as internships or high school research. All right, next slide, please. So this is a very important question that I want to address, this issue of breadth versus depth. So when it comes to extracurriculars, most of the time it's better to focus deeply on one or two extracurriculars rather than spreading yourself thin over a number of activities. And the reason why I say this is because colleges, they haven't been looking for well-rounded students anymore. They're looking for a well-rounded class. So the jack of all trades, but the ace of none, that's not really what you want when you apply to college. You want to be focused in a particular area. So you want to try your best to land leadership positions or structure your extracurriculars in a way that demonstrates focus. And leadership is particularly valuable because lots of colleges, they want to recruit the next generation of leaders. All right, next slide, please. So now we'll be talking about community service. So community service is good in demonstrating your character and your ability to succeed in an environment that is oriented towards the community. And many colleges, a lot of their focus is on community and on research. So community service is a great way to demonstrate this. All right, next slide, please. So some examples of community service that you can participate in is, for example, church or faith-based organizations. I know there's some churches who allow their members to do missionary work. There's other things like fundraisers, volunteering. You can participate in outside organizations such as the Red Cross, as long as you structure them so that they emphasize your extracurriculars and your interests. For example, one of my main avenues of community service was tutoring younger students in math. And that really contributed to my message of an interest in mathematics and a willingness to serve the community. And some SPHS specific community service organizations are Calculus for a Cause, like what Albert and Jamila did. There's the Sock Drive, and for you musicians, there's Spaghetti Dinner Night. Skills USA, I also know they not only compete, but they also offer a number of community service opportunities and also academic coaches. All right, next slide, please. So a very good piece of advice similar to extracurricular activities is to find community service that interests you specifically. And an essential thing when it comes to community service is to be consistent, because that way colleges know you can be dedicated to something and that it truly interests you. That said, though, this is just my own experience, but I found it very rare for students to be admitted through community service outright. It's not worthwhile, in my opinion, to accumulate, for example, 300 or 400 hours of community service just for college. In my opinion, that's time better spent with extracurriculars or academics. All right, next slide, please. So this part of the presentation will be dedicated towards structuring your college application. And I believe there are 5 main components to this. There's your academics, there's your activities and work experience, basically your extracurriculars. There's your academic honors and achievements. There's your personal statement and supplemental essays, and as well as your letters of recommendation. Next slide, please. So I just want to preface this with some general advice for choosing colleges to apply to. A very important thing to keep in mind when you're applying to colleges is to have an idea of what kind of field you want to major in. For example, if you want to major in computer science, a school like UC Berkeley would be better than, for example, Yale, which is focused intensely on the liberal arts. You also want to have an idea of the school size. So do you want to live in a small, medium, or large school? Does the school you want to attend, does it have to be an urban or suburban or rural community? And look at specific departments and degree programs that the schools offer and see if they tailor anything that you find interesting. And also, while prestige shouldn't be at the top of your list, it does certainly help later on when you apply to jobs and when you're looking to advance your career. Next slide, please. So when it comes to applying to colleges, it's important to not overload yourself. There will be the urge to apply to as many colleges as you can to sort of maximize your chances, but only apply to colleges that you think you can see yourself going to. In general, I believe it's good to apply to about 12 to 18 colleges, and you want to have at least 3 safety schools, which are schools that you can be easily accepted towards, 3 target schools. Basically, target schools are schools where the academic credentials, for example, average GPA of the school, average test scores of the school, they fall into your range. And you want to apply to about 3 reach schools, which are schools that you believe you have a low chance of admission. And I won't cover this too much in depth right now, but it's good to think about which schools you're applying to that have early action, restricted early action, or early decision. And if we choose to have another presentation like this, we can go into more detail about these. All right, next slide, please. So let's talk about academics first. Next slide. So academics, this section, you just simply enter your grades, your test scores into whatever application system your college uses. For example, the common application, it has sections where you enter your SAT, your ACTs, your AP test scores, and your SAT2 test scores. And one thing that's important in applying to perhaps any college is to maintain your level of academic rigor, because that demonstrates to college that you can also exceed academically. And for UCs, just remember to complete your A through G requirements so that you are able to actually attend those universities. All right, next, please. So there's another section in the college application where they cover your activities, extracurriculars, and work experience. So most applications will ask for a description of approximately 10 to 20 high school activities. And it's important to order them properly. So at the top of your list, you should have activities that you believe have had the largest impact on you. The description shouldn't be wordy. You should be clear and concise with describing your activities. And you can also use that section to list out your leadership positions, your extracurricular activities, community service, for example, sports and clubs. Next slide, please. So there are sections in the college application that cover academic honors and achievements. Next slide. This is the place where you stick in your awards and honors. The common application has, I believe, 5 slots for this. And some things I can put in here are academic awards. This would include things like National Merit, SPHS School Awards, awards that you gain from clubs. You can also include competitive musical and academic awards, things such as Science Olympiad, the National Chemistry Olympiad, Southern California Junior Bach Festival, American Mathematics Competition. And for sports, if you're a Rio Hondo League champion, or if you've participated in the Junior Olympics, this would be a good place to put them too. All right, next slide, please. And this is probably the most important thing you'll work on during your time filling out the college application is the personal statement and supplemental essays. So the personal statement has a maximum word count of 650, and you should really use this essay to paint a picture of who you are and focus on your strengths. But don't just focus on your academic or competitive strengths. It's important to use those to frame the strengths of your character. So what you want to do is you want to tell a story. You want to form a narrative so that it becomes a compelling work. Don't just simply list your accomplishments. You want to convince the essay readers that you have what it takes to succeed in college, but not just simply based on your past achievements, but also based on your character and your interests. And what's really important is that the personal statement should complement the rest of your application. You don't want your personal statement to conflict with what you've listed in your extracurriculars or what you've listed in your achievements. And most of the time, you'll actually be writing more than one essay in your application. And it's important that you don't repeat ideas in each of your essays because that'll make your application repetitive. Next slide, please. So lots of schools will have short supplementary essays, and these are anything from around 100 words to up to 650 words. And these essays will give you a specific prompt and either ask you to express another side of yourself or justify why you want to pursue your major and why you want to attend this particular college. And to really succeed in these essays, it's important to do in-depth research into your colleges. That way you can list specific academic programs if they're asking for why you want to attend this college. Or if you're faced with a why major question, you can reflect upon your own experiences or your extracurricular activities. All right, next slide, please. So when it comes to essays for the University of California, personal insight questions, you'll respond to 4 out of 8 prompts. And these essays are 350 words each. There is no 650-word personal statement when it comes to the University of California. Instead, you'll be writing 4 shorter essays. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to these colleges is that there's no why college or why major questions. Personal insight questions, their goal is to further develop your character and your interests into a cohesive image for the UC admissions officers. And just like when it comes to your supplemental essays, try not to be repetitive among your prompts. And one thing that sometimes isn't clear to students is that all University of California schools, they share the same application. So if you're applying to, for example, UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC Irvine, UC Santa Barbara, you don't need to fill out 4 separate applications. It only takes 1. All right, next slide, please. And then the last thing I want to talk about is your letter of recommendation. So most schools recommend you get 3 letters of recommendation. One will be from your counselor. This is guaranteed. Counselor must fill out a letter of recommendation for each graduating senior. Another one you should try and get from a STEM teacher. So for example, a math teacher, a science teacher. And you should also try and get another one from a humanities teacher. So someone who maybe teaches US history or world history. And the goals of letters of rec are to give admission officers another perspective on student applicants. So not just how you portray yourself to the admissions officers, but letters of rec will also allow admissions officers to see how you perform in the classroom or see how you perform with other people. All right, next slide, please. So here's some advice for getting good letters of rec. Try your best to have very good relationships with your counselors and teachers. So maybe drop off into your teachers' classrooms after school and talk to them for a little bit. When you do eventually go to request a letter of recommendation, try and compose a detailed brag sheet, basically a resume that can give teachers ideas for what they can talk about in your letter of recommendation. And a very easy pitfall to fall into is to not secure your letters of recommendation early enough. Ideally, you want to start and get in contact. If you're a senior next year, you want to get into contact with your teachers, ideally this summer. And that way, you avoid the sort of rush to get a letter of application in the fall, when most teachers are swamped by students and they may not have room to write a letter of rec for you. All right. Next slide, please. And I believe that's it. So thank you. If you have any questions for me, you can list them in the chat and we'll talk about them at the end of the presentation.
All right, very, very good. Adam, thank you so much. Give a lot of details on how to apply UC schools, and then also, how to manage your extracurriculars, those kind of activities, internship is great. Okay, so those attendants, you have any question for Adam, you can post your questions here in the Q&A, okay? All right, so we are going to have the last one, Preston Shaki, but not on this one. Preston has been accepted by Duke University, okay? It's also one of the greatest schools in the United States, okay? So, Preston?
Thank you. Can you hear me? I know my mic wasn't working. Okay, perfect. So I'll try to make this one quick. I'm sure everyone's getting a little tired now, but so can you go to the next slide, please? So just quickly about me, just so you kind of get an understanding of like what I did in high school. I had a 3.98 GPA, so that was 1B. I know like a lot of students are stressed about the grades, but like a couple of Bs won't kill you. It is important to have like strong grades, but at the end of the day, it's the writing and the extracurriculars that's going to separate you from other people on your college apps. 36 ACT score, 10 AP classes, and then outside of class, I spent almost like 95% of my time was just spent on the basketball court or in the newspaper room. I was the editor-in-chief, and then I spent a lot of time with basketball. I applied early decision to Duke, so I only filled out applications for Duke and the UC schools, and then I pulled out my UC applications after I was accepted to Duke. So I didn't apply to a lot of schools. Next. So I'm just going to start off with talking about high school advice, and then I'll get into the college application process. But next slide, please. So for classes, one thing that's always stressed in college info sessions is that they want to see you take the hardest classes that your school has to offer. So like they get a school profile and they know what AP classes are at South Pass or whatever high school you go to, and they want to see that you're really challenging yourself. But at the same time, you don't want to let like one hard AP class ruin your like mental health and also like ruin your grades in other classes. So not taking an AP class here or there won't kill you at the end of the day. Like same as Corey, I didn't take AP Calculus BC. I wasn't going to be an engineer, and I knew that even though like I might not have the hardest math classes on my transcript, I know that there's still other things that could get me into a top college. So it's important just to enjoy your time in high school and not really take classes that are just gonna make your years awful for you. So it's important to know like what APs you can handle, but it is important to have a good transcript for college. So while I did end up dropping Calculus BC, I also added AP US History last minute as a junior, just because I felt that I needed to make my junior year a little harder and a little more challenging for me. But yeah, it's important to know, like, talk to older people, get a sense of how hard each class is, because when you're filling out your schedule, you really want to make sure that you're challenging yourself as much as you can without really like affecting your mental health and making it so that you get like B's and C's in all of your classes. So it's better to get A's with 1 or 2 less APs than to get B's and C's and just challenging yourself way too much. Next slide. Yeah, so I already talked about it's important to know what classes you can handle. Like junior year, I ended up taking a lower level Spanish class. I know Jamila talked about that too, but I wasn't going to major in Spanish, so I knew that just taking an easier Spanish class would just give me time to take other classes and other activities that were more meaningful to me. And I took 2 APs as a sophomore, and then 4 junior year, 4 senior year. And I also tested out a Math 2+ as a freshman to take Math 3+. And while I'm not a math major, I think just testing out of that allowed me to have more room and more flexibility later in high school. And then also there's other like, so with math and science, they're like more on tracks where you can go like from one class to another. It's like regular, then honors, then AP, or like Math 1, Math 2, Math 3. So with those, you have to like really decide, am I ready to, like, what level are you ready to start at? So for like AP Physics, some people take regular and then take the AP class. But for me, I knew I could just take the AP class first, and then that would give me flexibility. So you really have to be honest with yourself and talk to people who've taken the class to figure out like what level is right for you, because you don't want to get a bad grade in the class, but at the same time, if you're ready to go to a higher class, it will give you flexibility later in high school. And you want to select hard classes, but at the end of the day, like, your mental health is more important. And like I definitely like think this is one of the most important things. Like, I know people want to get into a top college, but there's a lot of great colleges out there, and you want to enjoy these 4 years. Like, these are some of the most like meaningful and fun years of your life. So you don't want to let 1 or 2 hard classes just ruin that entire time for you. Next. So activities. So activities are definitely something that you write about more than anything on your college apps, I'd say. You don't write a lot about your classes because everyone just takes classes, but the activities and things you do outside of class is what really makes you unique, and it makes you you. So for me, like, going into high school, I'm sure a lot of people, like freshmen or middle schoolers on the Zoom right now, are probably thinking like, oh, I have to like do all these different things, like club president, volunteer with all these community service things. And that's what I also thought coming into high school, but it's not, and I didn't end up doing that. So it's definitely important to dive deep into the activities that you do. So for me, I didn't even write about one club on my college app. I spend most of my time, like I said, in basketball and with the school newspaper. And when you're writing about your activities, it's important to have like a common theme throughout everything you do, and it shows like passion in what you're doing. So an example for me, I think it's on the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, so colleges want to see common narratives, but one more slide, I think. Oh, there we go. So for me, like, sports was a common theme in everything that I did. So my volunteering, rather than just like choosing some random stuff, I'd been volunteering with a special needs baseball team for 4 years. I spent a lot of time coaching youth basketball and volunteering at sports camps where I was a coach and counselor. And then I obviously played 2 sports in high school. And while most of this stuff I wasn't doing necessarily like for college, it was just because I liked doing it. And I didn't do a lot of things that were just for college. Like, all these things I just enjoyed doing. And while you might look at this and say that like sports volunteering is not good enough to get you into top college. I think the authenticity and passion for what I do is what really showed on my activities on my app. So I just talked about my love for like doing like these sports volunteering and giving back to like what I enjoyed doing when I was younger. And then obviously I wrote about the school newspaper too, but I just wanted to show how having activities that all tie together will really make it easy to write on your activity sheet, just like to have a common narrative, because that's something that's really important. Around like sophomore year, I'd say it's important to think about what are kind of the common themes and narratives between the different things I do, whether it's classes or activities, that could really tie together and write about in essays. So you don't want to just have a little menu of all these random different things. You really want to focus on what do you like to do, and the passion will definitely come through in your writing. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I talked about this, but it's hard to just, on essays, it's hard to just write about like one little activity here and there. When you have things that are all similar and tied together, it just shows your passion and your love for what you do. And I think being authentic on a college app is very important. So almost all my writing was about sports and then the newspaper, because those were just where I spent all my time, and it's what I love to do. So I didn't really have any, like a lot of community service or clubs, like the typical things that you think you might need to get in college. I just stuck with what I love doing, and at the end of the day, it gave me some good things to talk about and was enough to get me into college. Next slide, please. So now for the college application process. So for test taking, I did all of my test taking during junior year, and I think that's definitely the best year to do it, because senior year, I know some people who are taking tests while they're trying to actually do their college apps, and that's just very stressful. Definitely try out both tests before you choose one. I started thinking I was going to take the SAT, but then I got a good score on practice ACT, and then the ACT ended up working out for me. For most people, it's not really about learning the content on the test. Like most of the topics on the test are pretty easy. So once you learn the little tips and tricks for just the content, it's all about just like repping out practice tests. So you just want to take practice tests and really just get a feel for the timing. And for me, I know some people will say like, don't like try to take too many tests. I ended up taking the ACT 3 times, and I ended up with a 36. So if you have the money, I know some people it's harder. For some people it's harder than others, but if you have the money to pay for a test, I definitely just recommend just like sign up for another one if you think you could do a little better. Because I didn't even, once I studied for the ACT the first time, I didn't really study after that, because I knew what I needed to know. And then it was just more about like being comfortable taking the test and just having more reps, I guess. So only I think like Stanford and a few other colleges care how many times you take the test. But with the vast majority of colleges, they just want to see your highest score. So it's, I mean, 5 hours on a Saturday, it's kind of tough, but it's worth it if you think you get a better score. Next slide. Finding the right college. So you definitely want to do a lot of research online, but I think visiting the campus is what really can seal the deal for you. Just being there in person is something that a website will never be able to show you. I know I went on one trip to the East Coast and looked at a lot of schools. I ended up at Duke, but I looked at like Vanderbilt, Virginia, a lot of schools in that area, and they were just like similar, pretty similar academics, and they're all similar on my list going in. I knew that Duke was one of my favorites, but after visiting the schools, it's just really clear where you think you'll fit in. And also, if you want to try to go when class is in session, because you'll see students walking around and you really get a good sense for just what the campus feels like. So visits are very important if you can. I know not everyone can do it. And then you want to start looking early. So you don't want to be figuring out, oh, what colleges do I like when it's time to apply. I think it's good to have a good list maybe around junior year, so you have time to visit before you start applying. And then for me, I applied early decision. And I think if you know exactly what school you want to go to, Duke was always like the top school I wanted to go to, and then my visit just sealed the deal. And then early decision at most schools, I know Corey talked about it, but some schools will have a higher acceptance rate early decision. So if you know what school you want to do, you want to go to, excuse me, early decision is just definitely something that'll help you out, and I definitely recommend it if you know what school you want. Next. All right, so more on the application. I don't have it written down, but I know Corey talked about it, and I just wanted to elaborate on having a college counselor. So going into the process, my older sister had a college counselor. I thought like, oh, like you really need a college counselor. But now that like I ended up not having one, and I really think you don't need one. Some people you might need one if you have no idea what school you want to go to. But if you have a general sense of what school you want to go to and can do that research on your own, I think a college counselor is like just a waste of money. It is important to have people that can edit your essays. So if you don't have someone in your family or friends that you think is like a good writer and putting good edits for you, you might need a college counselor for that, or you could just go to a teacher for edits. So someone that can edit your writing is important, but just having a general college counselor isn't that important. I know at South Pasadena High School, like I love our counselors, but it's a public school and there's a lot of people assigned to each student, so you can't rely completely on them. So you do have to have a couple people you could trust to edit your writing and just help you stay organized. So more on organization, what worked for me is I just made a schedule of like, all right, I'm gonna have my Duke supplements done by this day, my UCs, like 2 essays done by this day, and just staying on track of when you want to get, because there's so many different little supplements that you have to get done. So you just want to have a good schedule and make sure you're getting everything done on time. I finished my personal statement in the summer, which was just a huge load off my back for the fall, because the personal statement is the biggest part of your Common App, and it's hard to think of a topic. I know a lot of people, like I was scared. Like I was like, I don't know what to write about. I don't know if other students on this call feel the same way, but I was also thought like, oh, you have to have like this amazing story, like a trip to somewhere, and you like build like a school there. Like you hear like a lot of those like stereotypical essays, but I ended up just writing about like my personality and my curiosity and how that applies to everything I do. So definitely you could just think outside of the box when you're writing a personal statement. It doesn't have to be some amazing story. Colleges want to get to know you. So that's why it's called the personal statement. So just write. You don't have to write like you're writing a English essay. Just really write from your heart and just write it like you're talking to someone. And I know I talked about passion and activities, but I think the passion and authenticity in everything you do is so crucial to your Common App, or any app, but your college application. So you want to be passionate about the activities you do, and then you also want to be passionate with what you write about. So don't write about what you think will look good. Just write about something that you could write well about. And then last thought, don't get senioritis during college app season, because think about it. You spend these 3 years of high school just working your butt off with all these classes, extracurriculars. And I know some people who were putting in more effort in high school than they did with their college apps. So although most of the work is done during your first 3 years, you really want to put in the same effort that you put into your work in high school into your college app. So you don't want to do all these amazing things during high school just for you to put like a half-ass effort into your college app. And then, I forgot to write this down, but letters of rec. I heard a lot of the speakers before talk about letters of rec, and I know that, like they always say like, oh, like go to a teacher that you know, and that is important. But at the end of the day, I feel like with most teachers, they can write a good letter of rec, but it's hard for teachers to write a great letter of rec, because you normally just see them in class and maybe at lunch once in a while. So that's why I think it's important to get a letter of rec from someone from an extracurricular activity or a job, or just someone that really knows you well. So I got letters of rec from teachers, but also from my basketball coach and my newspaper advisor. And my coach and my newspaper advisor were just people that I'd spend hours and hours after school with, and they know me personally. Like I've had meals with them. And I think it really just shows in the letter of rec that these people know you more than just a student. So really try to get a letter of rec from a extracurricular advisor if you can. And is there one more slide, or is that it? Oh yeah, so final thoughts. Be passionate about what you do. I know like this is the most important thing, I think, is especially for you young high schoolers who still have time to choose what activities and classes you want to take. Don't do stuff that's just for college. Really do things that you enjoy doing, and then that'll come across on your college app really well. Obviously, time management is crucial. A lot of people talked about this before, and it's okay. Like a lot of people do procrastinate, but you just really have to, like ask yourself like what's important to me, and if you really want to get into a good college, then you're gonna have to make some sacrifices and study hard. And more on that, like sometimes you do have to work smart in high school. So if there's like little homework assignments or little mini quizzes in like a Spanish class or something that's not that important to what you really care about, you might have to miss little things here and there to really focus on the big tests or the big activities that you really care about. And yeah, there's a lot of great colleges out there for everyone. So I know a lot of people on this call might be really aiming for like a top 20 school, or really care about how hard the school is that they're going to. But there's a lot of great colleges out there, and they all have really great professors. And it's more about what you do in college than what college you go to. So don't ruin these 4 years of high school and stress yourself out too much just because you want to have like that prestigious college. Really enjoy these 4 years, have fun, and you'll end up at a good college. So yeah, I just don't stress it too much. There's a lot of great colleges out there. And yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Preston. It's a great presentation, and then congratulations for accepted by Duke University.
Thank you.
We learned so much from the 7 student speakers sharing their students' life, also apply for the dream college. I can tell from all of the speakers, they have, set up their goals, okay, and then the time management very important, okay, also consistent working hard, not only academic level, also extracurricular, and also get great relationship or referral to write recommendation letters. And also the last one, I think everybody mentioned is their passion, right? So you write your essay with your passion, you write doing things with your passion. Passion is very important. I think everybody mentioned that. And I think after all those speaking, your speeches, audience or attending, all the students are in our group, I think you can learn so much, okay? So next, we are going to go to a Q&A here. I can read some questions. Some questions is to particular students, and you can answer, and some questions general. Okay, so let's start it from here. First one is, okay, this question for Jamila. Can you talk more about how your passion for writing applies to whatever you want to pursue with mathematics and economics?
Yeah, so for me, a lot of my writing was like, it was how I expressed myself. And when I talked about it in college apps, I mentioned like being really interested in publishing works. One of my internships was actually with a USC professor where I published a communications book with him. It was like an information thing about like internet usage across the world. And for me, I think that is kind of how I applied it. Like I'm interested in publishing information, publishing texts that represent my beliefs and my research for my school. And I think that was one of the appealing ways I kind of connected my love for writing with my love for like STEM majors.
Okay, great. Okay, next question is for Albert. How did you incorporate your dedication to music into your STEM application? That's one question. There are one more too.
Okay, so Actually, my entire Common App personal statement was about music. And for Princeton, there's a question that's talking about what you spent your last 2 summers doing. So that was also tied into music. So admittedly, my application didn't do a great job of actually tying it into STEM. It mainly just talked about my experiences with music.
Okay. And then the same person, the second question, how did you show both your music and STEM passions equally?
So I think for STEM, I rely mostly on numbers, so test scores and grades, as well as my involvement in calculus for a cause. And with music, that had a lot to do with my summer activities, and also some schools let you submit a music supplement. So I already had recordings myself because I applied to music schools, so I submitted those as well.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, there is no particular questions to any students. And then I think, let's see. Okay, the audience, if you have any other questions, you can unmute yourself and then ask the questions we can ask the students to answer. And then if you have any other questions to our, to our other speakers, adult speakers, you can ask the questions too. Okay. Okay.
Hi, Mr. Mackin, are you there?
Yeah, Mike is here.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Mike,
Okay.
you need to unmute yourself. Yeah, unmute.
Yeah, please unmute yourself, Mike. Okay, good, perfect.
Hi, Professor.
Hi, good to see you, Mike. Okay,
Yes,
so
good to see you
right
too.
now, the Asian American parents and the students, especially Chinese American parents and the students, get very concerned about ACA 5, and it's quite possibly it could pass the Senate, and then we'll go to the general election in November. So if it passes, so what do you think will impact the Chinese American students?
Well, I think first of all, this is the first chance. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, as you know, 2 or 3 years ago, there was no ballot measure. It was a direct vote to change the Constitution. I think this time it gives everybody a chance. If the Senate votes for it, it will be on the November ballot. And so I think it's a great opportunity to really look at it. It's a different proposal than last time. For example, last time it was simply education. This one also may give minority businesses an opportunity to qualify for state contracts, local contracts that they never qualified for in the past. And I think people need to take a look at that because of the pandemic, a lot of Asian businesses are bankrupt or close to shutting down. And I think they need to take a good look to see whether there's something in this ballot measure that might be helpful to them. I don't think it's going to affect people that are already applying, but I do think that it's an opportunity for our students to really look at the issue and get involved. My opinion is not as important as the young people. As you know, many young people were out demonstrating recently on the issue of racial equality and gender equality, LGBT equality. I think this generation is very active socially in terms of social justice and the environment. So I think that it's really another opportunity to get involved. And I think that when people apply in the future, the people that look at their admissions, they may not necessarily care which side that you took a position on, but just the fact that you voiced your opinion on a issue of the day, I think a lot of colleges will be looking at that much more closely. So we can't look at this college admissions in a vacuum. We have to see it as something that is changing, that it wasn't the same way before. The SAT, as you know, has been eliminated for the UC system. that places a lot of emphasis on what your activities are. And I think a lot of universities are expressing opinions now on racial equality. And so if you apply and you have no opinion on that, or you have no activity on that, I think you're going to be at a disadvantage. So that's why I think it's an opportunity for students that apply in the next few years to really step up and show one way or another how they care about the issue. Thank you for asking. That's a good question.
Okay, thank you. I know this is really a very hot issue, and we have all different kind of pros and cons, and so hopefully, so I think that our parents, so you need to voice your ideas and voice your opinions and let yourself heard by the elected officials, and take measures to voice your concerns. And as Mike mentioned, we have some pros and cons definitely, and we should probably take this matter from a different perspective. But anyway, that will, like, the percentage for the Asian students to be admitted to UC, that definitely could be impact. And okay, so parents and the students take the challenge and make some changes. Okay, yeah, good. Thank you, Mac. Okay.
Okay, I'm back here. Okay, I'm taking the professor's position, so I couldn't join in. Okay, thank you, Mike. There is one more question from the audience, which to all of the student speakers. That is, do you have any tips on brainstorming topics for the personal statement? So I would like all the student speakers to give the answer, so one by one. You can just unmute yourself and then to answer that question.
I would say really just think about stuff that you like. Like I said before, I thought I had to write about one specific activity or one great experience like Preston mentioned, but I didn't write about that. I wrote about my interest in food because I really am really interested in it and it was fun for me to write about. So write about something that maybe it's not but one big event, but it's just an interest that you have that you've always had for a long time and how it can kind of be applied to other aspects of your life. So again, passion, something that you're really interested about, doesn't have to be anything super fancy, super special.
So I did a few different like brainstorming activities. I worked in like a small group with other students, and at first like we like just different questions like, oh, like what are some meaningful experiences? And with that, like I wasn't really finding anything. But then we did this one activity where it just said like if you had like a bag or something with like 10 things that you could bring to like a deserted island, like what are like the 10 like most meaningful like things to you? That really just helped me, like, because then I just started writing about like what I was interested in and what I liked. So if you just think about what you like, what you're interested in, like some of those most meaningful like things and like interest to you instead of just like big experiences.
For me, I personally wrote my personal statement about like a quality, and the quality I chose for myself was creativity. And I think that was really good for me because I chose to talk about how like I applied creativity to my extracurriculars, my school classes, how I dealt with people. And I think also it applied to like my writing and helped me tie together a lot of my extracurriculars and just things about me in general.
Okay, Charles?
So for me, I personally wrote about badminton, which was a very big activity in my life, but just for brainstorming for other essays as well, I kind of just reflected on what I was interested in, my values, and just things about me that are unique. So, and these weren't, some of the things just popped into my head. Like I'd just be walking and they popped into my head, but to evoke these kind of feelings, you kind of got to dig deeper into yourself and who you are as a person. So it's a combination of meaningful events in your life and also special things that are about yourself.
Okay, good. And
I mean, for me, it was pretty much my Common App essay was going to be about music somehow. And that just wasn't a question for me. But what I had to consider is how to fit that so that it would answer a prompt. And so I think it's just whatever your gut feeling is, because your gut feeling will tell you what you really enjoy doing. And you're not going to be able to write a 650-word essay unless you really are passionate about what you're writing about. It's going to be really difficult. It's going to feel like pulling teeth if you're trying to be someone that you're not.
Adam?
Okay, so my personal statement, well, what I tried to do was I tried to write about my cultural identity as a Chinese American. But honestly, I think that might have torpedoed my application because it resulted in it being a little bit unfocused. So probably not the best person to ask about this, but try and write about something where you can highlight your passions and your interests. And even if, it feels like something that might not be specifically related to your application, the personal statement is there as a reflection of your character. And I think that's what colleges really try to look for when they ask you those questions.
Okay. Everybody answered the question, right? Preston, answer the question too, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Let me see if we have more questions here. Okay. Okay, audience, if you have any more questions, you can post or unmute yourself to ask questions. And then our seminar already going on more than 2 hours. I think we're gonna stop here. And then our last one, I'm going to ask our sponsor, Top Education Institute, okay, in Chinese that means 校升学教育学院. They sponsor this event, and then I would like to thank Paul Chen and Jenny Wei for this great sponsorship, and also I will invite Mr. Paul Chen to give a speech.
Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate this year's high school graduates who got admitted by top university. Your 4 years of dedication have earned you a chance to study in your dream school. I'm sure that all the parents and students today will be benefited and inspired by your success stories. We're wanting to sponsor this event because we hope that we can encourage more high school graduates to share their success stories with students who share the same dream of getting into top university. Some words for the listener today. It's almost impossible for anyone to duplicate their successful stories, their high school life experience, because everyone's different. They are different in many ways because of their unique personal qualities and different passion for their major of study. However, we can still dig out some principal success from their high school stories. I think their common traits that they all share is that they are well balanced according to their stories. They are not only outstanding academics, they are also exceptional in their extracurricular activities as well. This well-balanced achievement is exactly what admission officers of top universities are looking for in their holistic admission review. It means that doing well in Gpa and standardized exam are not enough for them to be admitted. Vice versa, just doing well in non-academic parts is not enough either. You need both. Of course, your college application essay is also important. Sometimes a well-written application essay will help you to get in even without an exceptional grade. Well, they have shared their college admission success stories from the student's point of view. In my next seminar for parents, I will talk about how the admission officers select students from their perspective. I've been in college business for more than 20 years, and I will share some of my secrets just as a student today. And I know it's not easy to invite so many students to share their story. So, well, I want to thank the host. Your efforts appreciated all by us. Hopefully, we will have more to come. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, thank you, Paul, so much. Thank you. Thank you for sponsorship. Without you guys, it's not be successful, okay? So, very good. And then for the last, I'm going to also share you guys with our, let's see here. I try to pull out all the things. Share this one. Can you guys see this? Okay, so I also, for the last, I'm going to thank to our Southern California Asian American Parents Teacher Organization, which is I'm one of the founder. I have Linda Liu as a founder, Hong Zheng as a founder, also Helen Yu and Maggie Xiao. Maggie Xiao right now is in Beijing, and then she also joined us. So everybody's already online, but we don't have time for everybody to talk. And then 5 of us are the local South Pasadena volunteer parents. So we set up this organization to provide a better education opportunity for local students, including we're going to provide you volunteer academic excellency, you know, your training leadership skills. Okay, so we're going to working together with local schools and parents to develop your fully potential to become actively engaged global citizenship. So this is our mission. It's our mission for our organization. So I really welcome everybody, every parents join this organization, and then we are doing GoFundMe right now in order to get some donation to support our next activities. Okay, so that's all I want to say. Thank you so much for all the parents, volunteer parents. Okay, and then I also would like to say thank all the speakers, all the 7 students. Your excellency, your hard working now make your dream come true. Okay, as far as I can see that, I think you're on the way to go to your new your college life. I wish all of you successful in the future. Okay, so after 4 years you might come back to say, okay, I really enjoying the life in the South Pasadena High School. Okay, so as a former teacher, I also congratulate you guys. Okay, so and also I would like to thank Mackin to give us a great inspiring speech, and you're always there. We always love you. You are the great speaker and also always support us.
Well, thank you also for doing such a great job. You did such a hard work. Melissa, as many of you know, started an organization with her husband that promotes Chinese American language and culture.
Yeah.
And Robert is a professor at East Los Angeles College, and Melissa's also has another life as a real estate and business advisor, and taking time out of your precious schedule to devote yourself to the future of our children is so heartwarming, and you truly are a role model for me, Melissa. Thank you so much, and the community thanks you as well.
You are always welcome. Mike, we are really miss you because during this pandemic period, we couldn't get together to celebrate this graduation time. Otherwise, you know, just feel so sorry for all the seniors this year couldn't have get together graduation, you know. Actually, one of the speaker, Charles, is my son. We have to celebrate our graduation before our yard. So we miss everybody, but but this is anyway. It's unique and it's special. Okay, so I think by now also thank Miss Riederman still here. I'm not sure if Miss Riederman is still here, but Miss Riederman is a great teacher. Okay, so and I think thank you for your joining us too as well. Okay, so for all of it's my great wishes for everybody. I hope you guys has a great summer and enjoying the rest of pandemic life. Hopefully we come out soon with without a mask. That's what I say here. Okay, all right. Okay, so we're gonna end here. Thank you so much. Okay, have
Bye,
a nice
everybody.
weekend. Bye.
Have a great summer.
Yeah, have a great summer.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.